I still haven't recovered from season 8. I know there's like a million video essays out there on it already, and I'd be like 7 years too late, but sometimes I just want to upload one anyway, just for like the catharsis of it, you know? Growing up, I wasn't the biggest fantasy enjoyer. Don't get me wrong, I liked all the classic fantasy nerd stuff like dragons and magic and castles and wizards, but I didn't have a fantasy IP I was particularly attached to. I never got into Lord of the Rings, and I just barely missed out on the Harry Potter craze. So when Game of Thrones took the world by storm in the early 2010s, I didn't think much of it. In fact, when my mom got super into the show, I had no problem with her discussing spoilers around me because I was that confident I would never watch it. Plus, most of it kind of bounced off me anyways and sounded completely ridiculous out of context. She would say things like, "Wow, I can't believe Stannis is the one who ordered Melisandre's blood ritual that killed Renly." And I would say,
"Mom, get out of my room. I'm in the middle of a Destiny raid and you're embarrassing me in front of a guy who has the Vex Mythoclast."
But then everything changed when I got my wisdom teeth out and had 3 days of recovery ahead of me with nothing to do. On a whim, I decided to give Game of Thrones a try, and my god, it was phenomenal, especially once I got over the initial hump of learning the names and backstories of the show's obscenely large cast. Okay, so Catelyn hates Jon because he's not her real son, but Theon is cool. Jaime and Cersei are brother and sister. Daenerys is the mother of dragons, even though she doesn't actually give birth to dragons. Jaime and Cersei are brother and sister. Oh, Ned Stark is the main character. Okay, so nothing bad's gonna happen to him. We know that for sure. About halfway through season 1, I was completely hooked. There were so many characters that were instantly compelling, and watching them interact was beyond entertaining. You have Robert Baratheon, the king who led a successful rebellion just to realize he prefers war to politics. You have Peter Baelish, the low-born con man who mastered political maneuvering to become one of the most powerful men in all of Westeros. You have Ned Stark, the only moral figure in a brutally immoral world. You have Jaime Lannister, who commits incest with his sister and pushes a child out of a window in the first episode, yet has such an amazing redemption arc that everyone ends up rooting for him anyway. In the early seasons, the voice in the back of my head that questions writing and dialogue was shut off completely, and I was able to wholeheartedly invest in this show and the team behind it. If there was any one thing that made the early seasons so magical, to me it was the authenticity of the characters.
What did the Mad King say when you stabbed him in the back? I never asked. Did he call you a traitor? Did he plead for a reprieve?
He said the same thing he'd been saying for hours. Burn them all. If that's all, Your Grace.
When a character did something, it didn't feel like they were doing it to further the plot or set up an epic scene. It just felt like a real person taking natural action. The plot was a result of the character's choices, rather than the character's choices being a result of the plot. It was truly the best written show I had ever seen, until seasons 7 and 8, where it didn't just fall off, it created a singularity of suckitude from which no character or plot point could escape. The ending of Game of Thrones is so cataclysmically awful that it erased the massive cultural influence the show once had, like a Category 5 shitnado devouring a trailer park. For me personally, it left a wound that I'm hoping this video will finally heal, and that may sound hyperbolic. Okay, well, it is just hyperbolic, but still, it sucks to have one of your favorite things become one of your least favorite things over the course of just a few episodes, especially having waited years for the show's supposedly epic conclusion. But before we get into the rotten meat and moldy potatoes of Season 8's plot, I want to talk a little bit about the outside factors that contributed to it. Again, before you comment that all of this is old news, I just want to reiterate what I said in the intro, in that this is as much for me as it is for you. And I also have topics I want to talk about that I have literally never seen discussed in the 7 years since Game of Thrones Season 8 aired. Anyway, if you're one of the 5 people left on Earth who isn't familiar with this story, allow me to personally give you a VIP tour of the smoldering ruins of what was once the greatest show on television. Game of Thrones is based on the book series of the same name by George R.R. Martin, or as the fans call him, Germ. Germ has written 5 of a promised 7 books, and those 5 books served as the source material for the first 5 seasons of the show, more or less, with some plot lines wrapping up in Season 6. That's a big deal because it meant that for everything beyond Season 6, showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, otherwise known as D&D, would need to start generating the plot themselves rather than adapting what was already there. If you know anything about D&D and their filmographies, you know they are clearly gifted at adapting books for the television, and they are also clearly ass at writing their own stuff. For example, the early seasons of Game of Thrones were great. X-Men Origins Wolverine was not. Their adaptation of Three Body Problem also seems to be pretty good. David Benioff's short film titled When the Nines Roll Over, on the other hand, has a 1.6 out of 10 on IMDb, which is literally one of the lowest scores I have ever seen. The other half of D&D, D.B. Weiss, and this is not a joke, co-wrote a 2-hour-long X-rated Game of Thrones movie called Game of Bones: Winter is Coming. It's on the front page of his IMDb. There it is. So anyway, as soon as they ran out of source material, the show's writing began to decline rapidly. Another key outside factor that set the stage for the show's implosion was its needlessly slim episode count. Seasons 1 through 6 each had 10 one-hour-long episodes, but Season 7 only had 7, and Season 8 only had 6. George R.R. Martin has gone on record and said that HBO was willing to greenlight 10 seasons of the show, but D&D wanted to get it done in 8 so they could go sign a mega deal with Netflix and get on with the rest of their careers.
Why is it ending?
I don't know. Ask David and Dan when they come through.
You know, it's kind of understandable. They might want to work on a dream project, like the biggest and most successful show of all time. Granted, each episode in Season 8 was much longer to compensate, but still, even with top-tier writing, it would have been nearly impossible to answer the show's biggest questions and tie up every subplot with that little screen time. Predictably, the entire thing felt rushed, and events that played out over the course of several seasons would play out over the course of several scenes. This hurt the show immensely because a lot of the best character development came from the quieter moments between important scenes. Arya and the Hound traveling together cross-country comes to mind as a great example, which is an arc that literally spanned multiple seasons. We learned so much about both of their characters throughout this period, as they do nothing of particular importance to the overall plot. They bicker, tell stories, make camp, and pass the time, but because their characters are so well fleshed out, we're completely entertained the whole time. In Season 8, there's no time for such moments. I mean, these beloved characters aren't going to ruin themselves, so come on, we gotta go, we gotta get moving. I think a lot of what went wrong boils down to a fundamental misunderstanding of what made Game of Thrones great. D&D wrote Season 8 as if the 2 most important things in Game of Thrones are big plot twists and big battle scenes. In fairness, if you were to ask a Thrones fan what their favorite moment in the show is, it would probably fall into one of those 2 buckets. The problem is, D&D didn't do the writing legwork to make those moments land. Take the Red Wedding, for example, the most infamous scene in the entire show. Quick refresher, Robb Stark, his wife, his mom, and his unborn baby are all stabbed to death at a wedding, completely wiping out most of the good guys in the story. This twist works because the writing plants the seeds for it long before it happens, but because we as viewers and readers don't expect good guys to face real consequences, we ignore them. For those who don't recall, Robb Stark needs access to Walder Frey's bridge in his war with the Lannisters, but Frey won't let him cross unless he marries one of his daughters, which is especially rough for Robb because he's handsome and Walder Frey's daughters are ugly. Well, except for that one, but she's not there at the time for some reason. She's off to the side. Rob agrees anyway for the good of his people, but then backs out last minute to marry this girl instead. This paves the way for Walder Frey's betrayal at the Red Wedding, but because we have our good guy love story blinders on, it still feels like it comes out of nowhere. D&D do not treat any plot point in Season 8 with such care, and assume a twist only needs to be subversive to be good, leading to a bunch of garbage that feels completely random, like Arya being the one to kill the Night King, despite the fact that she has no connection to that plotline, while Jon and Bran, the two characters who've been tied to the White Walkers since the very beginning, sit around and do nothing. Well, Jon did scream at that dragon, so that was cool, that was fun. The best part is, George R.R. Martin has actually talked about abandoning foreshadowing for the sake of surprise before, inadvertently dunking on D&D's terrible writing.
If you've planned your book that the butler did it, and then you read on the internet, someone has figured out that the butler did it, and you suddenly change in midstream and it was the chambermaid who did it, then you screw up the whole book, because you get this foreshadowing early on, and you've got these little clues you planted, now they're dead ends, and you have to introduce other clues, and you're retconning, it's a mess.
That is a perfect encapsulation of what happened with Season 8. Yes, some people might predict that Jon Snow would kill the Night King, but that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It is the proper payoff for the setup you have been building for the entire series. D&D wrote an ending nobody could possibly predict because nobody thought it would be so bad. If Obama ended up on the Iron Throne, would that be surprising? Definitely. Would that be good? Definitely not. My fellow citizens of Westeros, I'm here today to ascend the Iron Throne. We face unprecedented threats as a nation, like the White Walkers marching from the north, and turmoil in our cities. But I promise to deliver unprecedented unity.
He's from Essos, everyone knows. Ask the Maesters, they'll tell you.
Don, you quit it with that right now, or I'll send you north of the wall. We all know how much you love those things.
The wildlings should have paid for it.
Basically everything that made Game of Thrones a breath of fresh air in the fantasy genre was inverted for Season 8. Gone were the glorious days of character-driven plot, and in its place we get a plot that forces the characters' hands in a way that makes no sense. Also, Season 8 takes a much more generic approach to fantasy tropes. In the early seasons, dragons and magic were seen as the nuclear weapons of Westeros. They were almost never used, but when they were, it was a drop-everything, world-changing event. But in Season 8, it might as well be Elden Ring. Everyone's using flame grease to buff their weapons, there are dragons all over the place. I think at one point Arya uses Mimic Tear and Moonveil, and let me tell you, the community was not happy about that one. But by far the biggest tragedy to me is the systematic dismantling of pretty much every major character. Like I said, I always viewed the characters as the foundation of the show, so I want to take special care to really drill into how each one was mercilessly destroyed. This will be sort of rapid fire because we have a lot of horrific writing to cover and we don't have all day, so if I miss something, feel free to add it in the comments below. I really feel like there's no other place to start than with the Mother of Dragons herself. Daenerys becoming the Mad Queen and genociding the very people she had been talking about saving for the entire show was truly the final straw for me. It marked the point where the old show was dead and its legacy forever tainted. But I would argue this turn for Dany could actually work if given the proper time to develop, like 3 seasons instead of 3 episodes. There are some moments earlier on that allude to the darkness within her taking over, but they happen in such quick succession that it feels completely artificial. She goes through relatively minor adversity in the grand scheme of things, and yet we're supposed to believe she has a complete and sudden psychotic break. Her close friend gets killed, which is a bummer. The boys club of Westeros doesn't accept her right away. One of her dragons dies because she forgot about the Iron Fleet. And worst of all, Starbucks gets her order wrong and gives her 2% milk instead of full fat, which, you know, I thought was kind of a weird moment for product placement, but hey, what do I know? There must be a deleted scene from a previous season where a witch puts a spell on Jon that forces him to respond to everything by saying, "She's my queen."
Daenerys is our queen. She shouldn't be. You are my queen. I don't know what else I can say. You are my queen. While she is my queen.
As the story progressed, Jon was naturally sliding into that protagonist role that had been occupied by Robb and Ned before him, and watching his leadership skills and confidence grow was one of the coolest things in the whole show. But again, D&D were worried that if he took the spotlight, that would be too predictable, so they fade him into the background completely for the show's final season. Game of Thrones as a whole essentially hinged on the answers to two main questions. One, who's going to take the Iron Throne? And two, what are we going to do about the White Walkers? Jon Snow is the only character with legitimate stake in both, and yet he is barely involved in either resolution, despite the massive revelation that he is in fact a Targaryen and therefore the true heir to Westeros. Yes, Jon does end up stabbing Dany after she goes nuts, but that's about it. He doesn't do anything else in Season 8 besides give a speech or two and yell at that dragon. The fact that he's a Targaryen doesn't even come into play. He tells Dany in confidence and she's like, "Don't tell anyone, okay?" And he's like, "Of course not, auntie, I'm a queen." And then that's it. He gets sent north of the wall and the credits roll. It's ridiculous. I'm not saying he needed to be the prototypical Luke Skywalker chosen one type character, but he definitely should have played a bigger role in two storylines he was incredibly invested in. The most simple, right-down Main Street approach would be Jon kills the Night King and then he and Dany rule together. Would that be perfect? Definitely not, but it's better than what we got, and it would take any Thrones fan 10 seconds to come up with. The night is dark and full of terrors, but it doesn't have to be with today's video sponsor, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep makes high-quality sleep masks and accessories designed to help you sleep better whether you're at home or on the go. If you're like me and you're prone to late-night gaming or study sessions, then you know that a good midday nap can make all the difference, and Manta Sleep has helped me take my nap game to the next level. Right now, I'm wearing the Manta Pro, and let me tell you guys, I might as well be watching The Long Night because I cannot see a thing. Manta's masks are made from premium materials that aren't just comfortable, but lightweight and breathable too. Their unique C-shaped eye cups also ensure there'll be no extra pressure on your face regardless of what position you like to sleep in, which is great for me personally because I move around a ton in my sleep. Another thing I appreciate about Manta's masks is how easily adjustable they are. I, unfortunately, am a grown man who still doesn't understand how straps work. You show me something like this and I am going to struggle, but Manta's masks, thankfully, could not be easier to put on or adjust, and they will fit any head shape. I have a lot of travel coming up this summer, and I can assure you the Manta Pro will be a permanent addition to my carry-on bag from here on out. My friends over at Manta were also gracious enough to send me their white noise machine, which is a game changer for anyone who lives in a noisy area or just like to drift off to soothing sounds. If you're still playing 10-hour-long YouTube videos for white noise, then trust me, you don't know what you're missing. The Manta white noise machine creates an immersive sound shield designed to help you fall asleep and stay asleep as you listen to one of 15 gap-free, non-looping sounds, all of which are programmable from this nifty little remote. So if you want to upgrade your sleep and master the midday nap, head on over to mantasleep.com or click on the link in the description below, and be sure to use code CB10 at checkout to get 10% off your order today. Ah man, this one hurts. Of any character in the show, I think Jaime grows the most and has the best overall arc. Again, this guy pushes a child out of a window in the pilot, and by season 8 was a fan favorite. That's a lot of heavy lifting for the writing to do, yet George managed to do it. Initially, Jaime was a sister-loving prick with a massive ego derived from his noble status and skills as a swordsman. But after being a prisoner of war and losing his sword-wielding hand in the process, he goes through a massive identity crisis that sees him emerge as a compassionate individual with a new worldview, leading him to eventually join the good guys. We assume he does this because he's over Cersei and sees her for the tyrant she is, and many fans theorize he would end up killing her, completing his transformation from reviled Kingslayer to celebrated Queenslayer. Wait, what did you say? Fans theorized something awesome that we were gonna do? Shit, we can't have that. All right, quick, throw away the script, we gotta start over. But sir, we spent months on this draft. I mean, I don't think it's a problem if one Redditor... Shh. Wait a minute. What's one thing nobody would expect? Oh, I don't know, that Jaime's whole arc would be for nothing and he randomly falls back in love with Cersei? That is brilliant. Wait, I was joking. Please don't. Raisin Bran, the first of the two overpowered Stark children. Even back when Game of Thrones was really good, Bran's storyline was one of the slower, less exciting ones, which is why it's especially hilarious that the justification for him becoming king is that he has the best story.
There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. And who has a better story than Bran the Broken?
Here, please hit me as hard as you can.
There's so much wrong with that scene that it makes my head spin. First, since when is having a good story a prerequisite for leadership? Could you imagine if someone suggested that in season 1? They would have been beheaded on the grounds of sheer stupidity. Second, Tyrion is a prisoner in that scene who was literally just told to stop talking, yet everyone just goes along with it once he starts his monologue. Third, and most importantly, Bran spends all of season 8 rejecting the idea of becoming king and then only accepts after Dany has burned King's Landing to the ground. Remember, Bran is all-knowing, so he knowingly stood by, or sat by, sorry, while millions were incinerated just so he could rise to power. That makes Bran the biggest villain in the show, hands down, and yet we're supposed to celebrate when he becomes king. This is the problem with having an all-knowing character in the first place. In a show that was always more about minds than magic, the entire concept of political espionage ceases to exist because of Bran. And the worst part is, he doesn't even use his powers to do anything cool. Fans thought he might warg into one of the dragons to help fight against the Night King, but nope, he's just used as bait. If you took his powers away as the Three-Eyed Raven, what really changes? We wouldn't know Jon's ancestry, but that doesn't even lead to anything, so who cares? His connection to the Night King isn't explored either, so pretty much everything that made him interesting as a character is left untouched, yet he becomes king anyway, despite having all the charisma of a head of lettuce. Arya is the second of our overpowered Stark children, and like her brother Bran, the extent of her abilities riddles the show with plot holes. She becomes a master assassin in Essos by learning the ability to convincingly impersonate anyone of the same stature by stealing their faces and wearing them as masks. She uses this ability to single-handedly avenge the Red Wedding, killing Walder Frey in gruesome fashion. Which begs the question, why wasn't using her to assassinate Cersei the plan all along? Arya has been talking about killing Cersei for most of the show, but decides not to last second because the Hound says so. Also, I personally do not buy her whole Dora the Explorer what's west of Westeros shtick at the end. All she's wanted to do throughout the story is reunite with her family, and while exploring was part of that quest, I never once got the feeling she had a passion for it. Pretty much everywhere she went, she experienced serious physical and mental trauma, yet after being back with her family for like 2 days, she's like, nah, this is boring, I'm gonna leave and set sail into the great unknown. Sansa is fine. Her ending's whatever. Queen in the North, that's cool. Good for her. Next. This one is kind of a package deal with Jaime because there's a lot of overlap in their stories, but man, this one pisses me off too because they ruined one of the best dynamics in the entire show. Brienne is the one who starts to shift Jaime's perspective after he loses his hand, and their unfolding friendship was such a joy to watch in the early seasons. In a show where nearly every male-female relationship is overtly sexual, it was really nice to see the two keep things platonic for a change. I always got the sense that their friendship was built on mutual respect more than anything else, and even if it's pretty heavily implied that Brienne has underlying feelings for Jaime, there was a mutual warmth between them even if he didn't reciprocate. But no, D&D had to take a massive dump on that too by having Brienne and Jaime hook up, just for Jaime to decide he actually wants to be with Cersei before Brienne can even put her clothes back on. It's like they looked at every character and said, how can we mess this up as badly as possible? Tyrion Lannister was always a personal favorite of mine throughout the show. There's something so inherently sympathetic about a character who brings so much to the table yet isn't taken seriously because of his appearance. George R.R. Martin has called Tyrion his favorite character to write, and man did it show in the first few seasons. He brought such sharp wit and humor to every scene he was in, and he was always a captivating presence on screen.
I had nothing to do with the attempt on your son's life.
The dagger found...
What sort of imbecile arms an assassin with his own blade? Did I gag him? Why? Am I starting to make sense?
Of course, Tyrion's IQ would drop in seasons 7 and 8 like a stream of urine off the edge of the world.
He's bringing all the dead people back to life, and they put the women and children in a crypt with all the dead people. So, Tyrion is smart, but I guess not that smart.
As soon as he became Dany's hand, he gets hit with the Orb of Confusion and doesn't make a smart decision ever again. He starts the show as a genius who nobody takes seriously, and finishes it an idiot who everyone takes seriously. Varys is one of, if not the single most cunning character in the entire show, and yet he dies because he tells the Hand of the Queen that he wants to betray the Queen. Here's Varys' actor reacting to his character's death.
I, Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of my name, breaker of chains and mother of dragons, sentence you to die.
This script is already getting long and we have other topics to cover, so let's speed run a few more of these. Cersei spends the entire season balcony maxing, and her stupid fake baby thing with Euron Greyjoy was weird and unnecessary. Euron Greyjoy shouldn't have been in the show at all, and from what I can understand, he was like 1,000 times cooler in the books. Okay, anyone else? I mean, there are probably more, but those are the big ones. Obviously, each character getting completely ruined is bad enough on its own, but the thing that makes me angriest is something I've never heard discussed in the 7 years since Game of Thrones died. The actual thematic message of Season 8, and therefore the entire show, is that no matter how hard you try, you can't escape your past or the circumstances of your birth. Let me explain. Daenerys spends the entire series trying to convince everyone that she is not her ancestors. She's not like the Mad King. She's not a tyrant. She will rule as a champion of the downtrodden, the breaker of chains. But who does she end up becoming? The Mad Queen. Jon Snow starts the show a bastard, ostracized by those closest to him and sent to the Night's Watch to be forgotten. From there, he slowly learns the meaning of leadership, sacrifice, and responsibility, eventually becoming the King in the North. But that doesn't matter, because when it's all said and done, he's a bastard, ostracized by those closest to him, and sent to the Night's Watch to be forgotten. Jaime starts the show a Lord Farquaad-looking jerk who's in love with his own sister. As we've discussed, despite the incredible journey of self-discovery he goes on, he dies a jerk who's in love with his sister. The Hound is initially blinded by his desire for revenge on his brother, but comes to find out that the only thing that makes him feel better is actually being nice for a change. But he dies getting revenge on his brother all the same. What a dogshit message to put out into the world. If you've ever done something you regret or were born into difficult circumstances, D&D are here to tell you that no matter how hard you try to better yourself, you will never be able to escape those things. That is just awful, especially considering everything we had seen until that point was delivering a different, much more poignant message. To me, Game of Thrones is a story about putting our petty differences aside to come together against an existential threat. Throughout the show, the Night King is this looming, all-powerful force that nobody's paying attention to because they're too consumed by their desires for power and wealth, and it will all boil down to whether or not the people of Westeros can unite in time for his impending invasion. Winter is coming, remember guys? Not that one, Dan, you freak. Jon Snow, being the central figure in both halves of that equation, is set up to be the unifying force that saves the day. We've already seen him do it with the wildlings, further illustrating that he has a knack for bringing about unlikely alliances. But no, the Night King's invasion lasts just one episode, and he's really not that big a threat as long as you have a 100-pound girl with a maxed out stealth stat. Not only do they ruin every major plotline in the show, they also just flat out abandon ones they were hoping we would forget about. Like the Azor Ahai prophecy, which is used as the justification for bringing Jon Snow back to life. Was the whole point just to have him come back and stab Dany? I mean, Arya's the best there is at stabbing. Why didn't the Lord of Light choose her? Or how about the symbols the White Walkers have been leaving behind since literally the first episode? No answers there? Did we kind of forget about several subplots? The only debate worth having about Game of Thrones at this point is whether or not the ending really matters. It's obviously bad, but is it so bad that it spoils the outstanding television that came before it? It's like going to a 5-star restaurant and having the best appetizers and steak you've ever had in your life and then getting served sweaty gym socks for dessert. That's 2 videos in a row now with restaurant analogies. Is this a pattern with me? Personally, I think that would be enough to ruin your meal, just like, unfortunately, I think Season 8 is bad enough to ruin the rest of Game of Thrones. Every reference to the Night King, every scene where Jaime grows as a person, every time Dany is generous to the oppressed, each one is tainted by the knowledge of where it's all going. It's one thing to have a controversial ending like The Sopranos, which famously cut to black in the middle of the final scene. It left a lot of fans unsatisfied, but it also opened the door for interpretation, and most importantly, it didn't cement a bad ending, it just left things in a state of flux. But it's another thing to have an ending that actively undoes previously established character writing. The Sopranos equivalent would be if Tony was an undercover cop the whole time and he actually hates Gabagool, and the whole story takes place inside of Christopher's screenplay that he writes after Tony arrests him. Alright, I'm trying to wrap this video up, but I'm not really sure how. I mean, how do I do it in a way that's compelling but unpredictable? I mean, what can I say? Endings are hard. Wait a minute. Of course. In about 10 seconds, witness the epic conclusion of Command B's Game of Thrones video. Watch as every topic he's discussed is neatly wrapped up in a way that makes sense and is fun to watch. The final chapter of the video starts now. Is this thing on? Guess what? I actually love Season 8. That's right, this entire thing, everything you've heard, was just a clever setup to subvert your expectations. I bet you didn't see this one coming, and therefore, this is a well-written video, especially considering all of the clues I left that indicated this twist was coming. I love Season 8. You remember that? I certainly do. I mean, Season 8 just frickin' rules, man. From the carefully crafted plot twists to the awe-inspiring CGI fight scenes. I mean, those reminded me of Avengers Endgame, which is the consensus greatest movie of all time. So, hello, who wouldn't want more of that? Oh, and the character arcs were pure chef's kiss. I mean, the way everyone ends up right back where they started, everything comes full circle, and circles are one of the best shapes. So how could this ending be bad? Yeah, checkmate. See you in the comments, buddy. Okay, I think I've made my point. If you've made it this far into the video, I genuinely appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your day or night. As always, likes and subs are greatly appreciated if you'd be willing to send one or both my way, and I'll